Marco,
Sean,
it's story time.
it is story time. You know what? Tell me about your AI.
I'm not going to tell you anything about my AI. It's top secret, all the stuff that we're doing with
Well, that's you. And then there's the rest of the world,
AI.
especially when you go to conferences. Clearly, we can't hear about anything else than AI nowadays. And maybe
There's
we'll
a
touch
question
on that
about that.
today.
There's a
Yeah,
question
what's the
about that.
question? What is it?
Well, how much AI is it new? Are you new to AI and you have it in your product, or how well versed is what you're doing with AI? And I think different answers from different folks depending on who they are and how long they've been in business and what they're
Oh,
trying to accomplish.
I have a lot of questions. So I think our
I'm
guest
sure you
today
do.
is going to have a lot of answers. So I think we move in. We bring Dustin Hillard in, and we're going to have a good conversation about AI and everything that eSentire does. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to the conversation.
Very good. Very good. Sean,
Yep.
how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So, yeah, let's just say, well, we're gonna get into the conversation, Dustin. But I think the point I want to make, and I'm kind of making fun of it a little bit, but um, let's be clear: a lot of vendors chase the shiny buzzword, marketing buzzword, and they build toward that with which they think customers want. And then there are companies that actually take meaningful, thoughtful approaches to solving problems and perhaps leverage new technologies to do that. And in the process may miss out on some of the communications surrounding what's actually done under the hood to accomplish such things for their customers. So that's kind of the gist of the conversation, Dan. I'm really excited because yeah, I wrote a piece on this machine learning and AI. I don't know, 10 years ago or something, and I called it the marketing mess way back then, because companies already started to sling the words around, not really knowing what it meant, not really knowing what they did, and heaven forbid the customer tried to figure out what it meant and what it did for them. That's a whole nother story. But you and your team, and through your work over the years, have been thinking about this for quite a while. So we're going to get into that, and I think it's a good place to start with who Dustin is and what you've been up to, because I think it sheds some light on this very fact that you've been looking at this stuff for quite a while yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm the CTO at eSentire. We're a security company, but my background is actually directly in the AI side of things. So I did my PhD in machine learning and AI over 15 years ago now, and so that's kind of been my passion for a long time. And spent a little bit of time at Yahoo and Microsoft, and then a startup that eventually was acquired by eSentire. So that was kind of my journey to here, and along the way have found that security is a pretty interesting space to apply these kind of technologies to. I think one of the jokes in machine learning or AI is it's always like within the next 10 years these amazing things are going to happen. I think it's an interesting time in the industry for both AI and security now, because some of those things have actually started to happen in provable ways. So that's a fun time to be working in the space. I think to your point, 5 or 10 years ago, some RSA that I was at, there was one of the vendors had these big AI, like it was like a 6 foot tall AI, and that was the entire statement, right? Like that was self-sufficient to declare. If you said AI, obviously you're doing something great. I think that's one of the fallacies is, often claiming AI assumes that something real or good is happening, but oftentimes it's more of just a statement and not a fact or an outcome.
Yeah, but there is one thing that needs to be said, especially when you look at things from a marketing perspective. There is a ton of great product that didn't prevail on the mediocre product because they didn't have a good marketing, a good enough. So that's one side, and then there is the other side, but there is a really good product that maybe hasn't pushed enough to reach the threshold to let people know what they were doing. So I think that's kind of like the joke how we were starting this conversation, and how there is a sort of an apology tour that the CEO is going to make. And I find it funny because actually usually you talk the other way around. So tell me a little bit about what do you think happened that you focused so much on the concrete stuff that marketing came on a second place?
Yeah, we're kind of starting that conversation now because we've been doing this for a long time. I've been at eSentire for almost 8 years now, and so the startup that I was at was acquired by eSentire to bring this technology to the core of what we do. We're a services company first. It's a blend of services and technologies that we use in order to deliver on our customer mission. But that mission is protecting customers. In the end, it shouldn't really matter exactly what specific technologies or AI or people were involved. Like people is a core element from our perspective because security is adversarial, right? So we're not of the mindset that there's going to be a moment where you don't need a human involved in your critical security incidents, but the technology can take a lot of the laborious effort off the table and boil it down so that the humans involved are getting the real interesting and important work done. So that's we've been doing that. We've been using machine learning models. Around the time I came 8 years back, we were finding that the EDR vendors were not seeing some new types of attacks like PowerShell attacks. Right, that was an area where attackers were finding there was a lot of power in those kind of like low-level tools that weren't being discovered by the AV and EDR technologies. And with machine learning models, we could see those kind of malicious indicators and bring them forward. And that was, a way that we were able to over deliver for our customers. But again, it wasn't that we went and flashed, we're doing these fancy ML things. It was more like, there's a novel attack methodology out there. We know how to find it. And our blend of technology and human response is how we, identify it and then also propose the kind of remediation steps to avoid it in the future, but also lock it down in the case of it being active. So I think that same kind of pattern has repeated now with Gen AI. People have been, kind of screaming about Gen AI is about to change the world, and it's starting to become more true. A year ago, you would have heard more pessimism from me, but over the past few months, we've been seeing how kind of transformative. That's a overused word these days, I suppose, but it's really what's happening. Our security analysts have this available to them in kind of all of their activities today. And because of what we do, time is of the essence. So it's important to us to get back to our customers within 15 minutes of something serious. But that limits, as a human, that limits us what we can accomplish in those 15 minutes. The piece that's really opened up for us now is with this automation of what kind of agentic AI can do when you provide it the tools is hours worth of effort that we're able to compress into those first few minutes and put in front of a human to make the final assessment. But that's part of what we're trying to be a little bit more proud and loud around now is that there's the outcomes that drives for our customers is pretty amazing, right? And doing that with a quality and efficacy that really protects them in ways that we weren't possible before is kind of the next step for us.
Yeah, and I wanted to know there are a few time elements that we want to touch on in terms of some of the outcomes, but I want to stay for just a moment more on looking back in time and some of the learnings your team has had as you're implementing these technologies to achieve outcomes, not just for the sake of building technology because it exists. So how, maybe leading up to the launch of Atlas AI Investigator a couple of years back, what were some of the things you did, and how did you approach the problem, and how did you select how to solve that problem using these technologies?
Yeah, I think it was the case before machine learning, and it is now with the kind of newer generations of AI as well, or the kind of data scientist communities would say garbage in, garbage out, right? And so like you could always try and solve a problem if you didn't have good data and a good understanding of the problem you were targeting. Just throwing the tech at the problem wasn't going to solve it for you. So it's been a kind of key element of how we've built the underlying platform to capture data in a repeatable way and that's consistent across customers. As a provider to thousands of customers, it's one of the kind of differentiating capabilities that we can learn. We see the novel attacks across many different customers and industries. A lot of our customers are in some of the more targeted industries that have critical infrastructure, healthcare, or manufacturing, and so forth, and finance. And so we often see those early attacks, because they're high value targets, and our customers have been targeted because of the resources or and so forth that they have, right? So it's how you can kind of gather that data, capture it in a way that allows you to learn from it and feed it back into the system for repeatable learnings is, regardless of the last few years of Gen AI capabilities, it's always been that kind of repeatable process of learning from an event and being able to feed it back into the platform with a repeatable methodology. So that starts at a kind of data, security, data lakes, data mesh, all these different terms that people throw around for how you capture that data is really, and that's apart from any machine learning AI that you throw at it, right? But having the data in a way that you can report on it and learn from it. And then there's the second layer of this is then the kind of tooling and automation, right? So if you capture the data in a consistent way that you can operate on across a large number of scenarios, then what kind of tools or orchestration and SOAR, I think, were a lot of what the industry has thrown at this problem to try and solve it. But a lot of times that was just the integration layer, right? It allow you to connect to a bunch of different vendors and tools in your environment, but still kind of put it on the particular customer to build the workflow to get there. And so doing that in a repeatable and scalable way has been another element. A lot of the times that was building tools for our human security analysts to try and allow them to take some of the main mundane tasks out of it, or give them tech enablement. And so those first two layers is what, for the last 10 years has been a focus of the internal eSentire core technology that really was making our security analysts more powerful and repeatable and scalable, right, in the ways that we understood things. And that's really been the kind of foundational elements to now the LLMs and Gen AI agentic frameworks allow us to drive that data and orchestration layer to these kind of intelligent workflows on top of that.
So I think it comes with a story of technology where something new comes out and there is the buzzword and there is like, oh, it's going to change everything. TV is going to kill the radio. Radio is going to kill the newspaper, and then we're all there. I think the approach here is, and the whole essence of this conversation really is, yes, AI is going a long way. Agentic AI is coming, but it's not that it's going to substitute. There is not the easy button. So at what stage are we now between this autonomy of the machine versus actually being a tool that the SOC analyst can use?
Yeah, so our experience is it's making things much easier for our experts to execute on, and also removing some of the need for specific technical skills. And so, for the past few years, those pieces I was just mentioning about how we capture the data and operationalize it through, code and so forth, that was, my engineering team would take weeks or months to develop some of those tools, right? And so now we're starting to get to the point where that's much lower effort, and the repeatability and kind of cost of those types of activities are being reduced. And so I think that's one element is that kind of, the iteration cycle of this development is getting faster. And so that's something that's really enabling us to do something in ways that weren't possible before. And then very much so, it's still injecting the expertise from the human that I think we're finding is how you give the most valuable outcomes. It's not like you can just start up a chat session and say, hey, I want you to go find a problem in this customer environment, and you figure it out and come back to me in a few minutes. I think what we're seeing really delivers on what our customers need is, we have, decades of experience of how a human expert approaches this task, and the ability to kind of encode that and operationalize it in technology is what's really become more possible. Like, I think, the SOAR platforms, you needed a whole security engineering team to develop maybe even just one workflow or the handful of key workflows that would cover some of your investigation space in the SOC. With these tools, we're finding that we've been able to scale it across all of the investigation types, that our team encounters. And it's that kind of speed of coverage and breadth and and measuring the quality to make sure we want to make sure that's all a good quality, but that we've been able to kind of have our human security experts define the parameters of what a good investigation looks like and give the strategies, and then these kind of agentic AI frameworks are able to compose dynamically on the fly, contextual to a certain situation, what approach should be taken, what tools can be used, and how to access the data, and that all strings together in a way that's giving outcomes that we really couldn't, do at the pace and coverage that we're able to today.
So the action itself, because I think that's what scares human, is that when you lose control. Like I want to know, I want to have advice, I want to have a report, but then I'm like, what if I actually empower the machine to do something and then it's wrong? Not that human cannot do it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because exactly. We can, right? So
sure.
Where are we with that perception from your customers, maybe that they expect to have this something that does something?
Yeah. So, I think there's a couple of different pieces. One of them is the investigation side. There's probably a little less risk there because it's, using tools to gather more data and understand a situation. And so that's where a lot of our focus is today is, how can the investigation be deeper and provide evidence in ways that justify an investigation outcome. And so in that way, it's actually helping us give more transparency and visibility into what a human might have done, right? Because we're acting on these relatively short time frames. Our SOC analysts before didn't necessarily have all the time and tooling to efficiently write up a whole report of all the actions that they took to get to an understanding. And so we're finding that we can improve the transparency and trust and visibility into the process on that side of things. The places where I think people think a little bit more about the risks and concerns is, what if I give this thing the power to lock out a user or isolate a host, and it has the ability to have real business impact? So today, that's the blend of humans and technology that we use as a provider is very much still having our expert human in the loop on that process, because most people don't want to hand the keys over on those kind of decisions, and it's something that our security experts are still best at making that judgment call in most cases. I think we're starting to see customers want their, if it's one of my standard users and a pretty high severity alert came in from a tool that I really trust, maybe I do want to default to locking out that user if I know that I can get them back alive in 10 minutes when someone, a human comes behind to validate that. So I think we are starting to see people being open to protecting first, especially if there's a clear and rapid path then, to getting back to normal. And so that certainly an evolution there of where customers are, for tools they trust, for a severe alert that they're thinking maybe the right thing to do is to lock down and then restore afterwards. But even there, you need a high level of capability around understanding. You probably don't want to do that to a core server that'll stop your entire business from running, but you may be willing to lock out a user on their laptop for a few minutes while you run down if something a severe intrusion's in progress.
It's kind of like the car, right? I mean, it may break on its own, but I prefer that it breaks and then maybe it wasn't necessary.
Exactly. And so it's the kind of thing where, there are hacker situations on those things too, right? The cars that have a bunch of software capabilities, the amount of controls and actions you might want to allow from a cloud driven perspective are the kinds of things that probably should be locked down. But there's a lot of capability. If it can automatically let you know that it needs service, that's a valuable thing, and kind of the human computer partnership there is something that can be beneficial under the right constraints.
So I want to go there with this partnership idea, because I think from my perspective, where a lot of things don't align is there's technology trying to analyze and make decisions and take action so that the analyst doesn't have to. But in reality, the analyst is almost always going to have to be involved. That's the whole point of an investigation, right? And so, it's not just flagging an incident and giving some severity to it. You need the context. You need the tooling to go off and look at a who is or where the source is, or what systems is it trying to hit next in its kill in its attack flow process. And there's a whole workflow that each analyst has. Each one probably has a different workflow. They think about things differently. That's what makes them unique, what makes them special, makes them powerful in their roles. They just need the data, they need the context, they need the advice, they need the tooling to enable them to enact on those workflows that they have in their head. And I think that's where what you've put together is super powerful, because it gives them that environment. It gives an environment to do what they need to do in their investigation process, so they can achieve the outcome, which is, this is bad, let's stop it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's do that fast. So talk to me about kind of getting to the outcomes, and maybe even start to talk about some of the outcomes that you're seeing from your customers.
Yeah.
Giving them the ability to do their job efficiently and effectively to get to the results that really matter.
Yeah. And I love the way you asked it, because I don't think you said AI or Gen AI anywhere in that question. And that's, I think what we're delivering to our customers, it's great if we can use this technology to do all these things better, but matters a little bit less what the exact approach is under the hood. And so I think also part of the way that we think about quantifying it, we think we should be able to show that we're delivering on these things to our customers. And so, the stopping an incident at the first host, everybody in security pretty much agrees you're not going to be able to stop all incidents, right? So there's an accepted risk that some new variant or some human manipulation technique is going to get someone access on a machine. But seeing that and stopping it as soon as possible is part of the way that we think about that. And so that's our kind of customer outcome: is can we kill it at the first host before it spreads in the environment and causes any damage, right? And so we're seeing that in over 99% of the cases where there's a intrusion, we're able to stop it at that first host. And so that's in kind of our North Star of, what should all this amount to, is that we're stopping it before any further business damage happens, right?
That's an important point. Say it again.
Yeah. So, it's, can you contain it at the first host? And I think that's a question that any security vendor should be able to answer, right? How much does your tool, your platform, or your service enable me to make sure that when an attack happens, because we all agree it's going to happen, it doesn't get onto the second or the 10th host? Because that's, I think every business has a little bit different way of measuring impact, and it's hard to put dollar values and all these kind of things on it. But I think everybody can kind of agree that if it gets onto the second and then the 10th host, it's implicitly, growing. And whether it's going to be a ransomware attack or whether it's shutting down business critical servers or manufacturing processes, that the more hosts a threat touches, the bigger the business impact is. And so how quickly can you stop it at the first host and limit it from expanding beyond that is a big part of kind of our North Star there.
Yeah, you don't let the game take control of your players.
Exactly.
The players control the game. You want to make that shot or make that goal, whatever it is, and not let things run amok. So I wanted you to repeat that, because I think it is super important. That's why we have tools and enable the analysts to do what they do, so they can stop it before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful you did that description twice there. What are some of the other outcomes? I mean, if it takes 10 days to do that, I guess
right.
The question is, does it matter if you do stop it? Does it matter if it takes 10 days? But you don't want your analyst spending 10 days doing it. Is probably the other thing. So talk to us a little bit more about how you enable them to be more efficient as well.
Yeah. And so, with that being our goal, then it's, how do we present all the information to enable that outcome, right? And so, the time is of the essence. I think the last few years of attack trends and all the different industry reports you can read about it, one of the prevalent themes is attackers are moving faster, and they're, able to get in faster and then take the next step faster as well, right? And so we do have our expectations with our customers is that within the first 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to be coming to a conclusion and, making a recommendation or actively stopping it. Most of our customers, we've gone through an onboarding process where we kind of agree on the ground rules, and they've enabled us to make those decisions for them, right? They trust that we understand their business and their environment, and that when we see an active intrusion, we're going to stop it first, and then we're going to get in touch with them. And so, and that's in that 20-minute time window, right? So now it's a question of, how much work can you accomplish in that 20-minute time window when you're, typically one analyst is working one intrusion. And so that's, an inherent human bound on kind of what can get done there. And so what we're doing now is, our best security analysts, have a clear game plan and, methodology they'd like to follow to run down every question. By kind of giving that game plan, we can run that in an automated way in the first few minutes of an investigation now. And so there used to be kind of a linear path of an analyst, going down the highest value questions. Now we can spread that out. So they might be able to, tackle 2 or 3 questions in that 15 minutes. Now with this automation, we've basically got that up to around 30 questions that are getting posed, answered, and analyzed and consolidated and presented to the analyst for that final investigation conclusion and recommendations. And so we're getting hours worth of work done within those first few minutes. And so it lets us kind of dig deeper into different corners of what might have been happening in the attack. And so we're finding that the couple of examples of the types of things that we can do now that we weren't able to before is, look back in the case history for that customer over the past year and understand if this was a normal thing that happened in their environment, right? And it's, with a large scale customer base, every analyst doesn't know every detail of what's happened at every customer for the past year, right? But one of the great capabilities of these kind of Gen AI tools is the ability to quickly and effectively, search through a lot of text to find a related pattern from the past. And so that's one of the pieces that we've been seeing is really effective. And then the other is it kind of has the tools have a general level of expertise about all kinds of software and security scenarios. And so, a big part of what happens is running down something that seems weird or anomalous because it's, relatively unusual and something that most people wouldn't know about. But there's in the general knowledge base of these tools, it's able to propose a hypothesis. So, well, I've seen that before this kind of thing can be a cause for why that might be a false positive, or this is particularly unusual. Whenever that behavior has been seen, it's been likely an indication of an intrusion, right? And so those kind of knowledge factoids and sourced with, a fact pattern for why that might be the case are the kind of details that can get pulled out when you're able to do 30 different question answer tool calls rather than just the top three to five that a human would have been able to do on their own.
And so these tools, I mean, you're describing a few of them here, and I don't know if you can maybe categorize the tools that are available and perhaps a peek into what they're doing to help the analyst. Because what I think is important is that it's aligning, it's building the tool and making it capable in a way that the analyst is empowered. And
absolutely,
yes, you have to have the threat actor and the incident and all that stuff ready, but in a way that the analyst can actually do something with it. So that, to me, that means you have all the attack information, you for lack of a better word, you prompt the tools based on what the analyst would want to know and do, and you combine some of those tools in a certain way to achieve what the expected outcome is. So if that's right, maybe kind of give us a picture of what some of those tools are, how they work, and how it works.
Absolutely. There, I think we think about them in 3 kind of categories. One of them is like direct evidence gathering. And so those are the integrations with the tools, whether it's CrowdStrike or Microsoft or your vulnerability, Tenable or Rapid7 or something. So it's, getting detailed telemetry from the customer environment that gives you perspective, what was the process tree in this case, or what network connections were being made, or what software vulnerabilities might have been on a machine. And so it's kind of these, detailed telemetry gathering to give a richer understanding both of the environment itself and the activity, the technical activity that was happening on a machine or on a network or in log data. And so that's kind of one genre of it. And then another is the threat landscape essentially, right? So checking indicators: is this a known bad IP address, or is this file hash a particularly, so simple things like looking it up on VirusTotal, or maybe understanding, is this parent-child process in the threat intel community known to be indicative of attack, right? So it's kind of contextualizing it from the threat intelligence data that we have internally, as well as that we can search externally. And then the final piece of it is always the customer context. And so that's going back to, the there you can have these first two are relatively general things, and then in any particular customer environment, there's known behaviors of their tools and software and people, right, that always contextualize whether this is likely to be malicious or is a typical business behavior. And so the understanding of, like, looking back into the knowledge base of all the shared understanding we've built in working with the customer is the other one that's really critical. And being able to capture that in a repeated way is another element of what we've built over the years, is so that we don't forget, every time we do something with a customer, it basically is captured and recorded in a way that we can understand in the future and make, give them a good decision, and not have to repeat to us, right? That's a frustrating thing from a customer experience perspective, is I told you 2 weeks ago, or even if 2 weeks ago is super frustrating. If I told you 9 months ago, it's like, oh, thank you for remembering. And so, a rich understanding of the customer environment and tools and process and people, all those elements is a critical piece.
All right, let's go on the client side, right? So I know that you just mentioned that everybody has his own story and knowledge base. I think that's very important. But there are probably some generic questions that every client is going to ask themselves and to you before they accept this agentic AI. And I know that you actually outline 8 major area of topics that are specific, like from autonomy, defining the autonomy and guardrail, explainability and auditability, and so on. So you want to maybe quickly walk through those, and I know that then there'll be a link actually to the documents for people to read these questions.
Yeah. So I think we've got that, 8 different areas that are important to assess when you're thinking about what kind of technology tools or vendor you might go with in these areas. That explainability and auditability is the one I think I'd focus on for this conversation, and really, matches up with a lot of what we've been discussing. And that's, people have the right to doubt these systems, right? I think one of the ways that can be most frustrating, to go back to how we started, is that people say AI and trust us and it must be better. I think it's better to start from the opposite hypothesis, which is you may be wrong. You gotta prove it to me. And so that transparency of show all the work, and also take it down to justifications that aren't because some LLM said so, or it was in the LLM knowledge base, right? So I think being able to generate the kind of evidence in ways that are direct from the environment. And so that things like, here's the process tree with this parent-child relationship. There's no Gen AI involved in that, but in a way that kind of shows you transparently where the conclusions are coming from, and then the analysis layer comes on top of that. So the other thing that we're doing is running large scale audits of what the AI conclusions are, because the last piece of all of this is that for us, as we iterate through all these different technology and model evolutions and the way that it's integrated into our overall platform, we want to constantly be skeptical ourselves, right? And measure it against what we know to be a ground truth from our human experts. And so we did a study of over 1,000 investigations where we saw that we can achieve over 95% match with our most senior security experts. And so seeing that people are evaluating it to a ground truth, I think, is the auditability side of this, right? So it's transparent with enough detail that then you can perform an audit, and then evaluate, is there a good criteria for that? And so again, for us, that's was it an intrusion or not, and were we able to achieve that outcome of stopping the attack before it was able to spread? And so that's the kind of leap forward that we observed earlier this year, is that this agentic system that we've been developing for a while kind of hit that threshold of human equivalency, and not just human equivalency, but our experts in the SOC that have been doing this for over 10 years, that it's starting to be able to match that at an extremely high rate. And that's where kind of to bring it back, we're apologizing now that we did all this work and didn't even mention it to you. We're starting to hit these things, and now we want to let you know, like, by the way, this is pretty awesome for what we can achieve for you as a customer, and here's all the ways to back it up.
Well, I like that.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Marco.
No, you go.
Oh no, I like it too, and I think what I want to say is, and I mean, so you have the 8 questions. We're going to put a link to that, but I think the point of the questions is to have a dialogue, have a conversation. Right. And I think especially when we have something like a UI-based, prompt-based LLM model with everything's hidden behind where's the data, when was it collected, how truthful is it hallucinating? There's a lot of mystery behind that screen, right? And I think we've reached a point where most people, and probably the organizations they work for, are blindly trusting this stuff, with the caveat, double check the response, right? to verify its accuracy. What I like about the 8 questions, and I'm sure there are more when you actually have conversations with your customers, is that it starts a dialogue. It gives you a chance to explain, this is what we're doing, this is how it works, this is why we're doing it that way, here's what you can expect from that. And if you achieve it, we're all happy. If you're not, we have a chance. We can have a conversation about why not, and we can figure it out together and achieve what we're destined to do, and perhaps even better, because we're having that conversation. So I want to, as we start to close here, maybe get some insight from you, what some of those conversations with clients sound like. What are their questions? What are their concerns? Where are they looking for trust and transparency, so that they can believe that you'll deliver what you say, and then actually experience that when they get in and get involved?
Definitely. So I mean, that first layer is really about showing it in a way that you're not having to just, it's not a 1 paragraph summary where the text should just be believed, right? I think the Claude 4 models have come out now, and the reasoning and outcomes they're able to deliver are pretty impressive. But the other thing, I think some of the recent research of these more advanced models is showing the hallucination rates, or if you're a pessimist, the deceptiveness rates are also getting to be a bit higher with some of these as well. And so I think in a security setting, it's always really important for it to be grounded in truth and data that's not summarized, but takes it to facts that a human can validate, because that's really critical. So that's
and auditability. You mentioned that earlier too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the auditability is the transparency, but then also that we're constantly self-evaluating internally, right? And so I think one of the benefits for us as a service provider is we have a large team of people that are experts in this. And so as the setting of this is kind of evolving, they're becoming auditors of the AI as well, right? And so it gives us a scalability in that process, right? Because it's not just enough to do a kind of handful and say it looks good, but something that we need to be doing with a self criticality to always understand, and in the pace that things are moving as well, right? Every time a new model comes out, or the models actually evolve a little bit under the hood from day to day as well, right? They're always being tweaked, and so understanding that the consistency and quality of what we're delivering is always meeting our expectations is a big part of the way that we think about it, and our customers have those same questions, right? Security, I think we're all a bit naturally paranoid for good reason in this industry, and so being able to prove it is a big part of what our customers want. I think the follow-ons to that are also around the privacy, right? Is my data turning into something like, I think that's something a lot of people are justifiably concerned about, is with all this data going to models and so forth, is my data leading to something, am I contributing to a model being trained in a way that I don't want to, or that is exposing my data there's all kinds of new risks in this area as well because of the tools that are getting used. And so having auditability of the underlying infrastructure of these agentic frameworks and how LLMs can be attacked is, I think, the next stage of the conversation that people also get to, right? And making sure that your own internal usage of it, or the vendors that you're talking to and how they use it, have a deep understanding of the security implications of implementing new workflows and capabilities with these things, because the way they can be manipulated, there's a whole new threat surface coming to light as well.
It kind of sucks when you wrap in and you touch on something that I want to start talking for another hour about, which is this. I mean, I'm not going to go there, but the fact that there is a collaboration for me is the biggest thing, and not giving anything as, this is gold. This is what you have to believe. It's a black box. Trust me. But there is, there is so much we don't know yet about how these things work, and so I kind of want to go very quickly through all these 8 categories that you're outlining. We don't touch on anymore. You already went pretty deep on one of them, but I feel like it's important for people to know what they are, and then eventually they can get to the link and see in a little bit more detail. So define autonomy and guardrails. I think you kind of touched on that, of course. Explainability and auditability, that was an important one. Adversarial testing and security resilience, that's an entire story right there. Supply chain and dependency, so that's another entire webinar maybe one day about that. Effectiveness and ROI metrics, data privacy, you touched on that, and continuous learning controls. I think that's really important as well. Enable greater collaboration, and AI power versus AI only. Why don't we finish with that? Because that's where we started, right? It's the human in the loop assurance. So let's finish with that.
Yeah, and I think it's a big part of, these are continuously learning systems, and I think we haven't reached that place where we think the AI is going to run off without any human guidance and do something better than...
I hope we never.
Right, exactly. There are all kinds of viewpoints on that now, right? But there's the kind of, for me, I see a couple of themes around this, the way people talk about it. One is kind of a scarcity path where the AI is going to take over and there's nothing left for humans to do because it's just going to do it. And it's the one that we're much more on the path of is the abundance that can be created, I think, by these tools, right? The empowerment and amplification of human capabilities. And so that's the one we're on, with a little skepticism built in there as well, right? So that having the human in the loop is always an important element of understanding and collaborating, so the model's not running down a path that you don't want to find out after it's over that it ran down a path that you were unhappy with, right? And so the constant feedback cycle of understanding the outcome that you're working towards and collaboratively, pursuing it in a way that you're handing off the tasks that don't really need to be done by a human if you can validate that they're happening at high efficacy, and then piling that all together to something that a human can be handed off to a human to make the high impact decisions that are needed is really the way that we're thinking about it. And that's the bar and the boundary line between those things, I think, has shifted every few months at this point. It's one of the fun things about this area right now is how quickly it's evolving. And so having experts in the loop is constantly reevaluating that, understanding where the quality is and where the outcomes are, and how to partner best with this technology is, I think, something that we have one answer this week. Maybe a few weeks from now, we'll say we've learned something new, right?
Yeah, I think as long as not only in cybersecurity, but in every aspect of AI involvement, even in the creative, the writing. You see this crazy Gemini video now coming out, and you're like, well, the industry is done. But then you start looking, it's like, I don't know, you still need the human. So I like to talk about those things, but in this case, I love how you kept these all conversations so very human. So very human-centric, between the collaboration with your clients and customer and partners, as well as the actual approach of not, still try to stay in control. So I love that. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions from all the people that have been listening so far, so they can obviously get in touch with you. They can get in touch with the team and get even more answer. And if they need questions, we're actually going to give them a lot of questions that they can ask you. So I'm sure you're ready to answer to those. And they can find more information on the page that is dedicated to eSentire and ITSP Magazine. And this was a fantastic conversation, Dustin, and I hope we can have many more.
Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
We just scratched the surface on nerding out here, and I'm itching to do more. So hopefully we have another chance to do that, Dustin. And appreciate you sharing all the good stuff you've been doing with AI and ML and everything else under the hood for so long, and sharing the outcomes that's produced for you and your customers. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Great talking to you both.
Take care.